Oh my god, can't open file for writing? What does that even mean? Okay, so I want to take us through installing the Pantheon desktop environment on a fresh Arch Linux installation. You can see on my screen right here that I just have the base Arch installation with no desktop environment up and running on a virtual machine. Everything I'm going to do today can be done from another desktop environment's terminal emulator. So if you're on KDE Plasma or GNOME or Cinnamon or whatever, you guys can install these packages directly from your own terminal emulator. But the more desktop environments you install on top of your kernel, the more packages start fighting for kind of prominence. And some desktop environments share some setting files with one another. And so they start to kind of like clash a little bit. So whenever you're installing a desktop environment, I always recommend starting from the base installation and just running that desktop environment so you don't have to worry about any potential breakage between your packages. So again, I'm here on my fresh installation. I'm going to go ahead and log in, and we can begin the process of installing Pantheon. So first things first, sudo pacman-syyy. Let's go ahead and update our repositories. Okay, now that our repositories are updated, we need to install xorg, some sort of text editor, and the git package. So that command is going to be sudo pacman-s. We're going to install xorg, vim, you can install nano here if you would prefer, and git. Go ahead and let that run. Okay, so the packages have finished installing. Next up is we actually want to install the Pantheon and Pantheon session packages. So that command is going to be sudo pacman-s Pantheon and Pantheon session. Go ahead and let that run on all the defaults. All right, so we've installed Pantheon and the Pantheon session. Now we need to install LightDM and all of the greeters that correspond with LightDM. So let's go ahead and do that. Sudo pacman-s, and we want the LightDM package. So that's LightDM. We want LightDM-GTK-greeter and LightDM-Pantheon-greeter. So go ahead and let that run. And now that that's finished up, we need to go ahead and get that configured. So let's clear the terminal with Control L. Fresh start here. And first we need to see what available greeters we have, just to make sure everything's installed on our end. So to check the available greeters, we're going to type in ls-1 /usr user /share/x greeters. Let that run, and you'll see io.elementary.greeter.desktop and lightdm-greeter or -gtk-greeter.desktop. So we want to add that io elementary greeter desktop into our lightdm configuration file. So the way we're going to do that is, let's clear the terminal again. Type in sudo vim, that's our text editor, /etc/lightdm/lightdm.conf configuration. So when you open that up, you'll be greeted with this nice and colorful screen. Go ahead and scroll down to right above where it says seat configuration, and we're going to hit the letter I to go into insert mode, and right under dbus service equals true is where we can start typing. We're going to add greeter -session space equal space io.elementary.greeter. Then hit escape, hit colon, WQ for write and quit. Go ahead and hit enter and clear the terminal. So from this point now, we can go ahead and boot into our actual desktop environment. Now it's going to look a little weird the first time you boot because Pantheon isn't really supported all that well on Arch Linux. We have some official packages, but a lot of this is also done on the unofficial user repository side. So the first time you boot into Pantheon, some things are going to be broken. Your plank is going to be broken. That's your app dock down at the bottom of the screen. Your wallpaper configuration is going to be broken, and some aspects of the top bar are going to be broken. So after we reboot into the live environment, we're going to fix some of those broken packages, but we need to install the AUR helper Yay in order to do that. And I've already given disclaimers on Yay. Proceed with caution when you're using Yay, especially if you use packages that I'm not explicitly talking about in this video. So in order to get into our desktop environment, let's go ahead and enable some services. Go ahead, type sudo systemctl, system control, enable lightdm.service, and then sudo systemctl enable capital network, capital manager. That's going to provide you with internet or Wi-Fi. And then hit enter there as well. And then from this point, you can either reboot your system or you can type sudo systemctl start lightdm.service. And this should take us into lightdm. And so you can see here now we have lightdm going. Up here in the top right-hand corner, you'll see this little footprint. That is the GNOME icon. We're going to click on that and come down to Pantheon. We don't actually have GNOME installed, so if you try to boot into GNOME, you're going to get a system crash. So make sure you switch this over to Elementary OS, the little E, swoopy little E, and then log into your user account. And we should have here the initial start to what looks like Elementary OS, but our Pantheon desktop environment. So you can go through the little greeter here. I like to choose dark mode. You can select your color, accent colors from the bottom here. Turn on or off night light. I'll just leave it off. Housekeeping is fine. I don't really care about that. I'm not going to connect any online accounts. And then I'm ready to go. So before I start, because I'm in a virtual environment here, I'm going to change my resolution so it's a little bit bigger. This little gear icon, come over here, we're going to go to 1080 by 1920, hit apply, and keep this configuration. Okay, so now you see what I was talking about with this initial installation here. Our top bar exists, the Wingpanel exists. We have no desktop background here, and we have no plank at the bottom. So we need to install some new packages, and we need to replace some old packages. So over here, you have your application drawer. You can get to that quicker by just hitting your super key in space, and that should pop up. You can also change what key triggers this in the settings later. But for now, just to follow along, that it's super in space to get here. And then type in terminal to get into the Pantheon terminal here. And so the packages we need to replace are actually our Pantheon packages, our window manager packages, our switchboard packages. We need to install tweaks, and we need to add some other packages just to flesh out the system. So in order to do that, we need to have access to the Arch user repository, which means we need to install the Arch user repository helper Yay. So in order to install Yay, you guys can look up other tutorials that already exist online, or you can check out my KDE Plasma customization video where I install Yay in order to install some packages on that one too. So I'm going to cut this process out, and I'll link a description I'll link to a video in the description that you guys can follow along to install Yay on your system. Okay, so we got Yay installed. I'm going to clear my terminal, Control L, and I'm going to get back into my home directory and moving forward. So the packages we need to install here, Yay-S, we need Pantheon-unstable. Again, that's going to actually fix our desktop background issue. It's going to open that up into the settings where it belongs. We need to update our window manager, so that's going to be gala-git. We need switchboard tweaks, which kind of functions like GNOME tweaks. It gives us a little bit more nuanced control of our settings. So that's going to be switchboard plug, or dash plug, dash Pantheon, dash tweaks, dash git. We also need Plank. We have Plank on our system currently, but it's not auto-starting because it's expecting a different package, which we don't actually have on an Arch installation. So we need to install a different version of Plank. That's going to be Pantheon-doc-git. And then we also want print notifications. This is just a quality of life thing. So that's going to be Pantheon-print. And then we also want an archive manager, so we can extract like zip files or RAR files or tarball files, that sort of thing. Again, another quality of life. So that's going to be file-roller. Go ahead and enter. Now, as you install these, as your terminal is just kind of doing its thing, it's going to ask you a couple of times if you want to replace a previous package. So it'll ask you on Git, it'll say there's going to be a conflict between the Gala you already have and the new Gala-git package you're installing. Make sure you hit yes. You want to remove the old window manager and get the new manager in. It's going to do the same thing with Plank. It'll say there's a conflict between Plank and Pantheon doc. Do you want to get rid of Plank? Make sure you hit yes. Both of those interactions default to no, so if you're just hitting enter and enter and enter and not paying attention, this installation is going to fail and you're going to have to redo it. So just make sure you're keeping an eye on what's going on and hitting yes when it's appropriate. Okay, so we have all of the replacement packages installed at this point. We can reboot our environment to apply some of these changes, or you can just log out of your current session and log into a new session. So that's what I'm going to do. Go ahead and close the terminal, come over here to the power icon, and just log out. You'll go right back into your LightDM greeter. Go ahead and relog in. And you'll notice now that Plank pops up on the bottom, just like it should, but we still have no background. So if you hit super and space again to open up your app drawer and type in settings, you'll get your system settings here, and you'll notice two things have changed. We have now the ability to access our desktop settings, and we have this package over here called tweaks. So let's jump over to desktop first. So when you come over here, you can select your wallpaper here. Now there's something broken that I haven't been able to fix, unfortunately, which is every time you select a desktop environment, it freezes your desktop environment and you're forced to reboot your computer. The nice thing about that, though, is at least you can change your background. So I don't know if you're the type of person that really wants to be changing their background very frequently. If so, you're going to kind of have a headache of always having your system freeze and then having to reboot it. But personally, it doesn't bother me too much. I just select my one and I live with it. So I'm going to select this one here, Odin, and just have that freeze my system, and then I'm forced to reboot. So when you select your background, it should apply. And you'll notice now everything else on the system is frozen. Again, this isn't an issue I've been able to solve on Arch. I think it's just an incompatibility issue that will probably get sorted out in a future update to one of the AUR packages. But again, I'm not holding my breath on it. So give that a second, and then you're going to have to force shut down your computer to reboot your system. So that's a little bit easier for me to do in a virtual environment. I can just force shut down, but I'll meet you guys back here when we reboot into our system. Okay, so we've rebooted our system, and now you'll notice that Light DM displays, instead of just the black screen, displays our wallpaper that we selected in the previous step. Go ahead and log in, and that wallpaper should also be live here as well. So now it's starting to look a little bit more like Elementary OS or a full-fledged Pantheon desktop. There's one thing I've also been unable to fix, and that's on initial boot, the Wingpanel doesn't function how it should. So if you open up, say, your photo viewer, and you make that photo viewer full screen, on a normal installation, your Wingpanel or your top bar here turns completely opaque. It turns black. But you'll notice that it's not doing that on initial boot. So the workaround for that is to hold the super key and press right and change your desktop or your virtual desktop. And now you'll notice that your Wingpanel has some opacity to it, and when you make that same program full screen again, it turns completely opaque like it should, or turns completely black like it should. Now in a normal Elementary OS installation, the Wingpanel is completely transparent when it's not detecting any sort of collision, and it's only when there's a collision detection in full screen that it turns completely opaque. So we can fix that, or you can leave it semi-transparent if you prefer it. But in order to make it a little bit more one-to-one with Elementary OS, there is a workaround for that. So go ahead and open up your terminal. So we need to create a configuration file in order to change the opacity of our Wingpanel. Let's go ahead and start by changing directories. We're going to type cd /.config. So that should take us into our config directory. Type ls to list the contents of that directory, and you'll see GTK-3.0. So we're going to change directories there. cd GTK-3.0, hit enter. 3.0, hit enter, and now we can list the contents of this directory, and we'll just see a bookmarks configuration file. So now we want to create a file in this directory. We're going to say touch, that's the command to create a file, and the file we want to create is gtk.css. And now when we list the contents of our directory, we see gtk.css. That's the file we want to edit at this point. So let's type vim gtk.css and paste. This little bit of code is going to be in the video description. Go ahead and copy it and paste it in by holding Control-Shift-V. That'll paste, and we should have this Wingpanel support code now in our file. Before we write it, I want to change some of these parameters. These RGB, when you see 255, 255, 255, that's the RGB for white. Hit enter, or not enter, hit I to go into insert mode. Delete those out and replace them with 0. So instead of being white, it's going to be black. And we want this last one, the A, 0.5. This is going to be the opacity. We're going to change this to 0.0, which is going to be completely transparent. Then come down here to the panel maximized portion and do the same thing. Delete the 255s, change them to 0. And then change this 0.5 to 1.0, which stands for completely opaque. So now when it detects collisions, it'll turn completely black, and when there are no collisions, it'll be completely transparent. Hit escape, right quit to save it, and now that we have that file written, the effects will be applied when we log out of our session and re-log in. So let's go ahead and log out. Log back in, and we can test this like we did last time by holding the super key, pressing right just to reload our desktop environment or whatever that's doing, reloading Wingpanel. Now we can open up a program, and when we go to make it full screen, the opacity should be 100% opaque on full screen, and 0% opaque or 100% transparent when there is no full screen. So the desktop environment at this point is almost complete. The one thing that isn't a one-to-one recreation of elementary OS right now is actually our plank, right? This little bottom dock doesn't quite look right. So we can find a different plank theme. So go ahead and open up a browser. The browser I use is Brave. And if you don't like what it shows here, you can always right-click, deselect, use system bar and border, and now it looks more appropriately themed. We can fix the theming in a second. Come over here to GNOME Look. Just go ahead and give that a search. It's my top hit. I'll make this full screen. And in the search bar, it's kind of hidden almost in the middle of the top right here. Just search for plank, or you can search for Pantheon plank. And it's this first hit right here, Pantheon Dark Plank Theme. When you click on that, come over here to Files, Download, click on it. I'm going to download from the mirror. Save it into your downloads folder. Go ahead and exit out of your browser. Super space to access files. At this point, if you want to pin this to your plank, you can right click and hit keep in dock. Navigate over to downloads, right click, open in archive manager, and extract. Extract. Close. Close. And now we have Pantheon Dark here. We need to move this file, so I'm just going to right click, I'm going to cut, come over here to home. There are some hidden files here. If you can't see your hidden files, hit Control H to show your hidden files. So we want to come over here to .local, click share, and we're looking for this folder plank, themes, and then we're just going to paste that folder into .local share plank themes right here. Go ahead and close that out. Come to your plank, hold Control and right click to access preferences. And now you'll see this top portion right here where it says theme default. There's a drop down list. Go ahead and do the drop down and select Pantheon Dark. And now we have the appropriate Pantheon plank theme. And we're almost at a complete one-to-one creation or recreation of elementary OS. The last thing I want to do is open up our tweaks. So come over here to settings, click on tweaks. We want to force use the dark theme. Go ahead and toggle that. Come over here to fonts. You'll notice that there are no default fonts selected. So we're going to search for this one, System UI, and I like to use System UI regular. Select. On document fonts, same thing, System UI regular, select. On monospace, when you click on that, type in mono. I like just the regular monospace regular, and I like to change that to 9 points. And then the title bar font, the one that says Cantarell Bold, click on that, search for System, and we're going to do System UI Bold and select that. Outside of that, everything else should be a complete one-to-one creation or recreation of elementary OS. And as you're navigating around, like if we open up our browser again, we should see the dark theme applied. Coming over here, settings, selecting dark, and use GTK, and now we have the elementary OS dark theme applied. That process works on any Chromium-based browser, Google Chrome, or like any sort of hardened Chrome kernel or hardened Chromed browser that you might be using. And when you're just playing around with it, should be completely elementary OS at this point. So hopefully you guys were able to follow along with that process. I really like the Pantheon desktop environment. I think it's one of the more minimal and understated but functional desktop environments we have. And it's also very pretty to look at, which is always nice to have something that's easy on the eyes. So thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next video. God, that one was a nightmare. Everything's fucking broken all the time.